Hello and welcome to News Now on TV360. I am Thelma Okoro. The Niger Delta Avengers have yet again blown up another crude oil pipeline owned by Italian oil giant Agip ENI. The group, which has claimed responsibility for several attacks on oil installations across the restive oil-rich region this year, carried out the attack by 3 a.m. on Friday. The attacks come days after the Nigerian government announced a withdrawal of its military forces in the region to pave way for dialogue with the group. However, the Avengers rejected an offer to dialogue with the Nigerian government. The attacks have driven Nigeria's oil output to a 20-year low, worsening the country's economic crisis. The group has also threatened that the region might break away from the entire country. Meanwhile, another explosion hit a pipeline operated by the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company, NPDC, at Sonomi Creek in Delta State, South Nigeria. A security official and a community leader in the restive Niger Delta told newsmen that the pipeline exploded around 8 p.m. on Thursday evening. However, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Nigeria's federal government says it will prioritize all sectors of the Nigerian economy in a bid to strengthen the economy. This was revealed at a town hall meeting organized by the Center for Democracy and Development in Abuja, the nation's capital. 5 ministers were present at the inaugural Buhari Meter town hall meeting. Nigeria's Information Minister, Lai Mohammed, Babatunde Fashola, who is the Minister of Power Works and Housing, Audu Ogbe, who is the Minister of Agriculture, Amina Mohammed, who is the Minister of Environment, and Udo Udoma, who is the Minister of Budget and National Planning.
By that singular action of going after corruption, of tightening controls, of having a zero tolerance for corruption, we have actually slowed the growth, slowed the decline of the economy by that action. And sometimes people don't appreciate the full consequence and impact of that action. But that isn't sufficient. Even if we stop all corruption in Nigeria, we will not solve our economic problems. So we need to do more, much more. We were advised, and we looked at it and we agreed that the main thing we must do straight away is to reflate the economy by having an expansionary budget. And so the 2016 budget was crafted in that way. It was crafted as an expansionary budget so that we would move from the, we allocated 500 billion last year for capital, and we managed to take it up this year to 1.8 trillion.
The first thing that we did in the regulatory environment was actually to sign in the 2016 environmental sanitation regulations, which actually give guidelines now to us and to states so that we can begin to enforce them and clean up our environment. We also inaugurated the high-level ministerial platform on the INDCs, which is Nigeria's response to what we will do for climate change. I think this is important because we're not doing it alone, we're doing it with other sectors. Environment doesn't have to have money to do renewable energy. The Minister of Power is here. Environment doesn't have to have the money to do smart agriculture. That's what I need to inform the Minister of Agriculture to do. So these collaborative meetings are important to what we do in terms of strengthening and being more efficient with the resources that we have. You saw last week that we launched the Ogoni cleanup. This is something that has been on the table for years. Attempts to make it a reality have not come to fruition, and that's one campaign promise that was brought to fruition within the year. And we hope now to be challenged to that implementation, which has the same issues that we talk about now of security, of corruption, and how to cut through that to make sure that we deliver to the women and the people of Ogoni land.
Yes, there is no power, but it does not mean that there is no capacity to produce some power. We reached a milestone of 5,000 megawatts in February this year. But when globally people are being trained about how to produce energy, I don't know in any part of the curriculum in the world where they teach them vandalization as part of the curriculum for producing electricity. You see, these are behaviors that I think that all of us, yes, it is government's responsibility to provide security, but when you have some idea of how extensive the pipeline network is and how compulsorily they must pass through our land, the choice must become ours whether we want to take collective ownership of the assets that serve us, or whether we would allow some people who, in the name of fighting for us, inflict more pain on us. But I don't know a country that wants to have electricity that breaks its own pipelines. I don't know any. Just yesterday in council, the Minister for Transportation was briefing us about people who have started going to remove bolts and nuts from tracks that have been laid for rail. So, again, we must provide police to provide. I mean, it just stretches the network. So, every time we point one finger, let us also look in the mirror at ourselves. There is need for some reorientation. And when it is said that this is not a responsibility of government alone, it is because this is a commonwealth. And therefore, it must be built by common contribution.
Boko Haram is not about religion. Boko Haram is more about politics, more about, a group of people trying to impose their views on us. But then Boko Haram has been able to thrive largely because of poverty, ignorance, bad government. But more importantly, we have not been able also to properly situate the large contribution of climate change to the insecurity we have today, not just in the north, but the entire Lake Chad basin. Lake Chad basin supports 20 million people in 7 countries. Lake Chad used to have 15,000 square kilometers of water. Today, that has reduced to under 500 square kilometers of water. What that means in effect is that 20 million people who had been depending on the Lake Chad for their sustenance, for agriculture, for fishing, have been dislodged. And it's sad that the Lake Chad crisis is one of the most underreported humanitarian crises in the world. Because today, we have about, over the entire Lake Chad, over 2 million refugees. And this is creating a lot of humanitarian crisis, and it leads also is linked to insecurity. And then we have also not factored in the population explosion. The population explosion in Nigeria is such that if we don't really address the issue, it's even more of a time bomb than religious fanaticism.
The Nigerian police has arraigned 5 persons suspected of killing Bridget Agbahime, a market woman in Kano State. Agbahime was killed last Thursday by a mob after she was accused of blasphemy. The 5 suspects, Dauda Ahmad, Abdullahi Mustafa, Zubairu Abubakar, Abdullahi Abubakar, and Musa Abdullahi, were arraigned before a chief magistrate court on a 4-count charge of incitement, culpable homicide, and mischief. 8 other suspects remain at large. The presiding judge fixed June 28 for hearing into the case to give the police more time to conclude their investigations. He also ordered that all the accused persons be remanded in prison. South Africa's MTN Group says it will pay 330 billion naira over 3 years to the Nigerian government to settle its lingering fine. In October last year, Nigeria originally fined the mobile phone operator $5.2 billion for failing to disconnect unregistered SIM cards in the country. However, it was eventually reduced to $3.9 billion. In a statement issued on Friday, the group said that after several weeks of negotiations, an agreement was reached with the Nigerian government on terms acceptable to all parties. A federal high court judge in Abuja has slammed the National Hospital in Abuja over the transfer of former spokesperson of the People's Democratic Party, Olisa Metu, to a Lagos hospital for treatment. Justice Okonabank had last month refused an application filed by Metu to travel abroad for medical treatment. At the resumed hearing on Friday, Abank questioned the hospital for failing to inform the court that the defendant had been transferred to another hospital. Metu's counsel, Emeka Itiaba, then presented a medical report signed by the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. He applied for a 2-week adjournment of the case to enable Metu to recover and appear in court for his trial. The judge then adjourned the case till July 7th for continuation of the trial. Nigeria State Security Service says it has arrested 5 persons who are linked to the creation of an ISIS training cell in Kano State. Speaking to journalists, the State Director of SSS, Abdullahi Chiranchi, said the individuals who were arrested were from Kogi State and were moving to Libya, Morocco, and other places with ISIS presence. He, however, did not disclose their identities. The Nigerian Army says its troops have carried out raids on various Boko Haram camps and killed 3 Boko Haram insurgents. During the operation, the Army also rescued dozens of abducted civilians. The operation, which took place in Nigeria's northeast region, also led to the recovery of over 300 vehicles, cache of arms, and other terror-enhancing devices. The Boko Haram insurgency has raged on in Nigeria's northeast region for about 7 years now, killing over 10,000 people. However, in the past few months, the Nigerian military has succeeded in curbing the activities of the sect. Human rights group Amnesty International has accused the Nigerian army of killing at least 17 unarmed Biafra protesters during the clash between both groups in May this year. In its reports, which the group said was based on details from eyewitnesses, morgues and hospitals, it said soldiers opened fire on members of the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB and their supporters in the southeastern part of Onitsha during the build-up to a march in late May. However, the army has dismissed the report, describing the claims as, quote, tissues of lies. In a statement, the army accused Amnesty International of misleading the public and defended the actions of its troops, saying they only resorted to self-defense after the Biafra group attacked security agencies with firearms. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says it is working hard to minimize the rate of mass sacking in banks within the shortest time possible. Earlier this week, the federal government had threatened to sanction banks and telecommunication companies which failed to comply with its order to suspend retrenchment of workers. But the managing director of Standard Chartered Bank, Bola Adeola, said the mass sacking in the sector was part of the issues discussed during the committee's meeting. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria have issued a 21-day ultimatum to the affected banks to recall its workers or face unprecedented industrial action. This was made known at a joint briefing in Geneva, where leaders of the NLC and the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria insisted on targeting banks that have engaged in mass sacking of their employees. They say they are in support of the federal government in its plan to withdraw licenses of banks that refuse to hold further mass retrenchment of Nigerian workers. The albinism community in Nigeria is celebrating the second edition of the International Albinism Awareness Day. People living with albinism have again asked the federal government to resume free treatment of skin cancer for them, not just in the National Hospital in Abuja, but also in every other designated hospital. The group also says there has been a significant rise in the number of deaths of albinos due to skin cancer.
Albinism community in the world will stand to mark the second edition of the United Nations International Albinism Awareness Day. I'm using this opportunity to call on federal government to, one, reinstate the free treatment of persons with albinism not only at the National Hospital, but in all the designated hospitals as agreed by previous government. I'm also using this opportunity to let the government know and the generality of Nigerians that the sunscreen with Albino Foundation logo that was manufactured in Germany have arrived in Nigeria. And you can see behind me piles of this sunscreen. This sunscreen has Albino Foundation logo, therefore it will not be sold. In the market it's about 3,000 naira, but we're going to give it to albinos in Nigeria free of charge. The sunscreen will be distributed, many of them on Monday, and given to some of the coordinators that will come, and we expect them to hand it over to individuals with albinism in their locality at no cost at all. So I'm using this opportunity to please appeal to federal government not to leave the agent who brokered this deal for us, to pay them. That bill has been sent to Federal Ministry of Health. Granted, is not reflected in this year's budget. We don't even mind if it's reflected in next year's budget so that it can be paid and no one will lose their money. They are trying to do good for us and we shouldn't reward them with evil.
Nigeria's President Muhammad Buhari has approved the appointment of his special advisor on planning, Ben Akabueze, as the new Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation. Akabueze takes over from Tijani Mohammed Abdullahi, who will now serve as special advisor to the President on planning and will continue to work with the Minister of Budget and National Planning. A statement issued by President Buhari's spokesperson Femi Adesina said the redeployment was part of an ongoing exercise to reposition the ministry. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll look at more news stories. Please don't go away.
Corruption not in my country.
How work?
Oh, correct, Oga.
What is it that you are doing?
Oga, they command the part now. Make we go sell for.
Oga, na correct kuza be this o. Oga Titus and him boys them. They do am. They will command the original parts, sell them, make plenty kusa.
No wonder our customers bring the generator back to our workshop because they bad. And not because of stuff.
Now because they overuse the generator. Plus say NEPA no they give them electricity.
Before I open my eye, Makachuku look at my talk in the heaven. Replace this original generator parts back inside this generator of my customer. In short, before una do am, frog jump. One, frog jump. 1, 2, 1. Stealing of generator parts or changing of original parts to a fake one. That is the corruption. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. You're watching TV360 News now. The Bankers Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has urged Nigerians and foreign investors to remain calm as it works out on a framework for a flexible exchange regime. This is expected to help ease the country's exchange rate difficulties. Analysts say the Naira is expected to trade cautiously as currency traders and investors await clarity from the CBN on its latest foreign exchange policy.
Accordingly, Monetary Policy Committee decided that the bank should embrace some level of flexibility in the foreign exchange market. Given the imperative for growth, the management of the CBN has been mandated by the NPC to work out the modalities for achieving the desired flexibility that is in the overall interest of the Nigerian economy, and the implementation of the new framework would begin.
When Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele made that announcement at the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting, business owners in Nigeria as well as foreign investors heaved a sigh of relief. This was owing to the imbalance of the Naira against the dollar on the parallel market. and Nigeria's Apex Bank had come under intense pressure to address the exchange rate imbalance. It's been close to 3 weeks now since that announcement was made, but the CBN is yet to release the guidelines for the new forex policy. This has unsettled investors who are worried about getting caught in the middle of a devaluation. In fact, the CBN's delay has increased speculation on the Nigerian currency. The naira has been unstable in the black market, moving from 320 when the announcement was made to 368, which is the current rate. And the rate is still going up. This is against the official rate of 197 naira on the interbank market. Demand for the dollar has also increased amidst growing scarcity.
And then 2 gentlemen.
In a bid to calm fears, the Bankers Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria, at its latest meeting in Abuja, has now moved to assure businesses and investors that the framework for the flexible exchange regime is being worked out.
The central bank has been working on this for some time, and a lot of inputs have been received. As you know, some other jurisdictions have also implemented the flexible exchange rate model. Some of them have done it very, very well, and the others are still fine-tuning what they have done. In the case of Nigeria, we want to make sure that we come up with a model that is very robust and very comprehensive, that will be able to address the major exchange rate issues that we've been dealing with. To this extent, we have gotten a lot of inputs from various stakeholders, and these inputs are being distilled with a view of getting a very robust, flexible exchange rate model. I believe that in a very short while, the framework is going to be ready.
The bank has also emphasized the need for better financial inclusion rates in the country, as well as financial literacy.
Financial inclusion is something that's very, very important to the economy today. If you recall, in the last Bankers Committee, we spoke about the rate of exclusion. As at today, we have a financial inclusion rate of 60.5%. And you recall that the target is that by 2020, we should have 80% of the population included. So the central bank has agreed targets with commercial banks and also microfinance banks. And by the end of this year, 2016, we hope and are working towards increasing the inclusion rate by 8%.
It's important for people to be better educated, to better understand what is happening in the financial world. We felt that it is important to engage the media, to help the media raise its own level of financial understanding, so that the public at large will be able to also improve its own level of financial understanding and financial literacy, which will enable us, from a communicating perspective, get balanced perspectives into the public space.
In spite of the assurances by the Bankers Committee, international investors and domestic firms remain anxious about the specific plan of the CBN on the forex flexibility policy. Nigeria, which is Africa's biggest economy, is facing its worst economic crisis in decades as a result of the fall in crude oil prices and the 2015 introduction of a currency peg that triggered investors to flee the country. A further delay by the CBN may have devastating blow on the Nigerian economy. Thelma Okoro, TV360, Lagos. Oil prices fell on Friday as a stronger dollar pulled crude off 2016 highs hit this week. Although strong refinery demand and global supply disruptions lent support to oil prices, Brent oil futures were trading at $51.15 per barrel, while U.S. crude futures were down 85 cents at $49.71 per barrel. Crude oil prices have almost doubled since touching their lowest in early 2016. South Africa's President Jacob Zuma and state prosecutors on Friday sought the right to appeal against the High Court's ruling to review a decision to drop 783 corruption charges against the head of state. The National Prosecuting Authority, NPA, set aside the charges against Zuma in April 2009, allowing him to run for president the same month. But the High Court last April ordered a review of that decision, terming it irrational, a ruling that opened the possibility of the charges being reinstated. The state is appealing to the ruling on the grounds that the law gives prosecutors the discretion to decide when to lay charges and that the order for review could dilute the powers of the NPA. New pieces of debris have been found in Madagascar by a man searching for part of missing flight MH370. Blaine Gibson, who has already found possible debris in Mozambique, made the latest discovery on the east coast of Madagascar. One of the parts resembles an aeroplane seat part. MH370, flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, had 239 people on board when it vanished in March 2014. The 2016 European Championship will kick off on Friday despite the huge security tension surrounding the scheduling of the event in France. Some of the stellar names who will be participating in the tournament are three-time World Footballer of the Year Cristiano Ronaldo, Real Madrid winger Gareth Bale, Arsenal midfielder Aaron Ramsey, Sweden's Zlatan Ibrahimovic, England's Wayne Rooney, among others. However, preparations for the tournament has been tainted by fears of a terror attack following the increasing presence of terror groups ISIS in Europe. Ukraine's State Security Service on Monday said a French citizen detained last month had been planning mass attacks during the Euro 2016 football tournament. The British government has also warned fans traveling to France for the 2016 tournament of potential terror attacks at the match venues. France has already announced it will deploy 60,000 police officers for the showpiece event. Thousands of people have gathered to pay their last tribute to boxing legend Muhammad Ali. The funeral takes place on Friday with several world leaders expected to attend it. The former world heavyweight boxing champion, one of the world's best-known sportsmen, died at a hospital in the U.S. city of Phoenix in Arizona state last Friday after being admitted late Thursday. He was suffering from a respiratory illness, a condition that was complicated by Parkinson's disease. The funeral was held in Ali's hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. Head coach of the Under-17 national team Manu Garba has warned against activities of some persons who are alleged to have been demanding money from unsuspecting Nigerians in order to have their awards in the Golden Eaglets. Garba says Nigerians must be wary of imposters on social media asking for money on his behalf so as to offer their awards chance in the Under-17 national team. Garba told NFF that he has reliably been informed that a certain man identified as Ata Aneke and some at large have been parading as officials of the NFF and have allegedly swindled people huge sums of money. Well, that's all we have on News Now. We thank you very much for watching. I am Thelma Okoro.